Salutation Shades, and welcome back to your one-stop shop for all things strange and unusual. Talking with Shadows, the conversations everyone has, but no one wants to admit to. Here with your host, Marcus D. And you might have noticed our intro was a little bit different. There was some awesome guitaring going on right after our normal intro. And that is because my guest in the studio today is one of my absolute favorite guests that we ever have. Because today we're going to be talking about clandestine organizations and weird, seedy government stuff. So who better to talk about it with me than my buddy, the Libertarian Guitarist. Thank you so much for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me on, Marcus. It's great to be back.
Yes. Yeah. For those of you that are familiar with the podcast and the channel in general, you guys might have remembered the Libertarian Guitarist came on and did an episode with me where we talked about Bob Lazar, the whistleblower back in the 80s who blew the lid off Area 51 and pretty much does his own documentary about every 10 years talking about why the government still lies to you about UFOs.
Every 10 years or so, give or take.
And he just...
He's got to keep people interested.
Yeah, he's got to feel relevant so that way the government just doesn't black bag him.
Right.
I tell you, my favorite moment from that episode that we did had to have been when I made the comment on his very first documentary. He literally just goes, "Hi, I'm Bob Lazar, and these are government secrets."
And Bob back then, anyway, he looked so freaking nerdy. Like right now, like nowadays, he looks pretty distinguished and he looks like a normal dude. Back then, he looked like straight out of like Poindexter stuff, kind of stuff.
Yeah, he did, and it was just it was one of my favorite episodes we did. And those of you guys that are listening, Vic is still out. However, he is feeling better. He called me today. We're recording this literally the day after that I put up the episode that I did with Frank Hessian on the disappearing object phenomenon. So he is good. I think he's going to be back in the studio with us next for our next episode. But I have been quarantined all weekend due to a COVID test, which was negative, by the way, but I've been quarantined, so I thought it'd be fun to get 2 episodes in, so that's why I brought on Frank Hessian and, of course, my buddy, the Libertarian Guitarist. Thank you so much again for coming on, man.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a privilege, man.
Absolutely. So, unfortunately, due to being quarantined, my alcohol supply is kind of low. So, nobody tell Vic, this is between me, Libertarian Guitarist, the Shades. I have resorted to having to drink a Seagram's today. I'm not saying Seagram's is bad. I'm just saying as far as alcohol choices, they're probably more refined alcohols to have.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I am drinking water, more specifically Ice Mountain water, which is, in my opinion, the best water you can get, best tasting, pure spring water. So if you ever get a chance, guys, Ice Mountain's where it's at.
I drink Fiji water a lot. It's probably one of my favorite bottled waters. Although I used to go on this other podcast called the Bulldog Unchained podcast, and I bought a Fiji water, and I brought it in, and he started ragging on me about it, and then he's like, "Oh, you're drinking bougie Fiji water," and I just went, "No, man, this is just from the tap. Like, I just filled up. I just bought the Fiji water like before. Just kept filling it up with tap water. It's because I was being cheap. More specifically, I'm drinking a wild berries Seagrams. But I have like another like bottle of like rose. Or I did wherever it went. I had a bottle of like rose wine in case I run out of this while we're talking, but I thought the Seagram seemed kind of refreshing because it's still kind of muggy out today. So for those of you that are joining us today, I'm not going to be able to go over the comments yet from the disappearing object phenomenon. Mostly just because since we're recording this episode the following day, I still want to give people some time to be able to leave some comments. However, I did want to say that it is currently trending #1 in our last 10 episodes. So awesome. Thank you guys so much for all the support that you guys give. Frank and me, I thought, did a really good job in that episode. So if you ever check that out, it's a whole episode where we talk about just random objects disappearing. And then like you'll be working with something, you'll turn your back, and then you'll turn around and it's not there anymore, like your keys or your remote or whatever. Or other instances we talk about like objects just magically appearing like money. Like, did you know that's a real common thing, man? Like where you'll be like literally just minding your own business and then you hear just a sound and like a clink sound and you turn around and like change or like money with a money clip like lands in the room you're in.
I mean, I definitely sometimes misplace things. I just thought it was old age, like getting to me.
No, I thought that was stupid. But I was so surprised that literally the most common thing when it comes to objects just magically appearing is always money.
Yeah.
How come we can't get like that kind of like like I feel like the kind of luck that we would probably get, or definitely, at least definitely me, is like this magic bill that I didn't know where it came from. Like it lands like I owe some sort of medical bill.
Well, you should. I mean, I'm sure the Federal Reserve could teach you some tips in that, because I mean they can create $6 trillion out of thin air and just divvy it out. Give us $1,200 checks for staying home.
I mean, that would just be. I mean, I feel like if they just sent me money just to stay home, I'd be like, I feel like at that point, I feel like I'm not be biased because at that point, then I would just literally just make YouTube like podcast episodes like all that. Just would just be a professional podcaster, and my life would just be better.
I'd be okay with that because I mean, like, your show is pretty entertaining and informative, and I enjoy listening to it.
But it's only because I have the best guests that come on. So again, remember, while the Vic is away, Marcus is going to play. So we're talking about like weird disappearances and things going missing for whatever reason. I thought it'd be very, very fun to talk about a strange type of disappearances where nuclear scientists are either turning up dead or missing, and a few other things. And I'm like, so this is probably going to involve some like clandestine stuff and some not so favorable comments about the government. And I thought she'd be perfect.
Sounds good to me, man.
I know. I told Vic about this, and he's like, well, I don't know, man. You got to be careful what you want to say. And I'm like, you're not here, so.
Thankfully, like it's not a topic that I delved into too deeply, so hopefully it doesn't get me put on a watch list or anything.
Well, I hate to break it to you. I'm pretty positive if you come into our podcast, you're already on a watch list. I'm pretty positive. I'm pretty positive both you and me are both on. I know that Vic is actually on a watch list because if you guys don't know this, Vic talks about this. Vic talks about this all the time, where every time he gets on a plane, he gets checked for additional screening every time, every single time. Like he went to England, and he told everybody that ahead of time that I'm going to get pulled out of the line. They're going to screen me. Nobody believed him, and he did. He got pulled out. Dudes, literally, airport officials were like, "Where are you going? Why are you going there?" And then eventually, like, he was delayed for like an hour, and then he was allowed to go on his way.
Yeah, man. Well, maybe he just has one of those faces, or maybe the TSA is just profiling him, being jerks.
Like, I think when I asked him about it, he said that he was I think he thinks that it was because he before had to purchase a copy of the Anarchist Cookbook. Now, don't hold me to this, guys. I want to say I'm citing this off of memory. I'm pretty positive because he in college was a philosophy major, and I believe at one point he actually had to read the Anarchist Cookbook for a class, so he had to purchase one. And if you've ever bought that online, like it's sorry, my wife just came in and just left. Sorry, that was the reason why that. But if you buy that book, you end up on a watch list because of it.
Yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense because I mean, whenever people think of that book, who do they think of? They think of the Columbine situation because they obviously had those books, but for educational purposes, I'm sure that it's an interesting read nonetheless.
And you know what's really weird? You know the guy that wrote it later came out like regretting that he wrote it, and he commented about that.
I'm sure he did. I'm sure it like ostracized him from a lot of people whenever whenever it was used for what it was used for.
Yeah, you know, but it's weird. But a lot of stuff even from that book was used. I know a lot of stuff in that book was transcribed and used in a lot of the Arab Spring that they used whenever I want to say it was in Tunisia. I want to say no, but I know that it was in Egypt or whatever. Whenever people were trying to help them, whenever they were trying to liberate themselves from their governments that they had over there, a lot of the stuff in the Anarchist Cookbook ended up in material that went over there. We just went off the rails a little bit, I think, but that's okay.
It's all good.
That's I knew we would. It's fine. But no, all right. So today we're talking about missing nuclear scientists. Ever since I was in college, one of my absolute favorite topics involves nuclear politics. It really did. It didn't start that way. My original passion in college when I got a degree in political science was in environmental politics. And when I got to my senior level class, or my senior year, the semester right before I'm about to have my final semester, my advisor came to me and she said, Chris, we want to start our own capstone class in the political science department. And there is no political science capstone. It's like the final class where it's like a $4.99 class where you have to do a bunch of research and papers and stuff. And we don't have one, but we want to have one next year. So to do this, you have to have the class ahead of time as the class, but it not count as a capstone. So you have to do all the work, but it doesn't count as a capstone. I still had to do my capstone. So I did World War I. Real easy. It was a history one. Real easy. Political science major. I thought World War I would be a walk in the park for me. And I'm like, I really don't want to do it. And she said that it was going to be over nuclear politics. And I said, I don't really want to. I'm about to do a capstone. I don't think 2 capstones is good. And she literally said, and I quote, "You want to graduate next semester?" And I'm like, oh crap. And I 100% believe that she would not have let me graduate if I did not take this nuclear politics 499 class. So I did. And I spent a lot of time in the class doing research papers over all sorts of nuclear politics from the 1940s on the modern age, and it's horrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah, you learn stuff like about like in the 1970s how like constantly the United States Air Force is recommending like us nuking Russia like preemptively. Like that's like one of their like main positions that they have. We need to do this ahead of time, and like just every day, like the United States president's going, "Nah, we can't do that." Like, and it just makes me like wonder like how important his guy that brings him coffee is every day, because like one day he just doesn't do it right. Now the president's upset.
You didn't put cream in my coffee. We're gonna fuck. Oh, sorry, language.
You're okay. We're rolling.
We're gonna nuke that nation.
Yeah. I'm probably gonna go ahead and put a not safe for work comment like, mature content. It's fine. But we're fun. But that's what it is, and it's so ingrained, and truthfully, there's weird paranormal stuff that goes on with nuclear politics, like in nuclear energy. We've talked a lot about like strange like stuff with like UFO craft and a lot of weird paranormal stories with like clandestine government agents and stuff that they had that kills vegetation. people develop certain cancers when they're around certain technology and things like that with UFOs. That it mimics a lot of the stuff with nuclear energy, right? So I think that there's definitely nuclear. It has a weird place in the paranormal that I don't think enough people talk about. The people that listen to the podcast know that I'm insanely passionate about this. Like if I could do if I wrote my own book, that's what it would be about. Is how like nuclear energy, and stores involving that. Like there's tons of stuff like with Chernobyl and when it crashed, and there was whenever that went down, like there's Mothman sightings with it, and like weird radioactive pigs running around in Chernobyl, and just it's a weird topic. But I thought it'd be really cool today, since we're doing disappearances, to talk about the stories that surround nuclear scientists going missing.
Yeah, and you might have to give me the scoop on all that. I know what we're delving into.
That's okay. That's what I'm here for. So one of the things that I noticed right away when I started Googling, like mysterious disappearances, I'm looking for different topics because it's really cool. Yeah, we could definitely talk about like one particular case where somebody goes missing. We've done that before on the thing, but I thought it'd be really interesting to try to find some other weird sort of angle when it comes to disappearances. And as I was doing that, I slowly started seeing more and more articles about nuclear scientists in other countries going missing. Yeah. And so the very first things that I started noticing was that the three major countries where this happens in is Iran, Pakistan, and India.
That is interesting.
Yeah. None of the major cases of people going missing really are in any actual country that's I don't want to say supposed to, air quotes, that's supposed to have nuclear weapons, like
superpowers.
Yeah, like there's no cases really of Chinese nuclear scientists going missing. There's definitely none of U.S. scientists that are easily found that I discovered. Same stuff with the UK. Now there are stuff in that, but I'm gonna get to that a little later. With the UK, France, I did it. It was all in other countries where generally the major superpowers were generally don't want people for some reason to have nuclear weapons, right? Obviously Israel does not, the United States probably doesn't want Iran to have nuclear weapons, right? They're very adamant about that. Same for Pakistan. China's hugely adamant that they do not want India to have nuclear weapons as well. So, as of last year, I think last year actually probably marked one of the very last cases that I found where somebody died under mysterious causes related from this. Yeah, apparently it was last year. It was November 27th, 2020. Iran's top nuclear scientist was assassinated. Damn. He was driving down the road. He was driving down the road on November 27th, 2020, and he's driving down the road, and as they pass a truck on the side of the road, the truck explodes. And this is where things get sort of dicey, because Iran reports that what ends up happening is the truck that explodes or had an explosion from it had an automatic turret that was in it that unleashed that started firing on the truck. But other people are reporting that there were actual gunmen I would say a deserty knoll, and they gunned him down.
Yeah.
And people in Iran was completely blaming everybody else. They're saying that no, he wasn't that they were blaming other countries, and everybody was saying, hey, I'll let the dog out. Oh, she's gone. And other people were claiming that the country and Iran's blaming Israel and the United States and saying that they were behind it. They were like, I don't know what you're talking about. It's probably dissidents within your own country.
I mean, as far as the nuclear situation. I think, at least politically, governments, nuclear energy, nuclear bombs, it's a very good way for governments to keep their populations under control. If governments are always on the threat of nuclear, or governments are always threatening or saying that, hey, all you guys are always under the threat of nuclear annihilation, then they're more willing to sit down, shut up, and do what they're told. And okay, we have to do this to save ourselves from the threat from this from this rogue nation or this terrorist regime. I mean, how long did the Cold War last? Like quite a long time.
Yeah, so a little bit.
So it's just something to think about. And like, I don't know how that plays into these particular countries like India and Pakistan or whatever. What was the other one you mentioned earlier?
Pakistan.
Pakistan. So like, I don't know how that fits into it, but nuclear weapons is a good way for superpowers to keep people in line.
Absolutely, and I mean, and I 100% believe that you know, with the threat of nuclear, you know, of like nuclear war or nuclear deterrence, it definitely is going to inspire a lot of clandestine operations. You know, It's my favorite thing to talk about in here because you know, when me and Vic first started the podcast, one of the things that Vic always used to do is he gave a black bag tip of the day, like how to avoid being black bag, like being like, I think it was be faster than the person you're next to, or already be wearing a hat because they can't black bag you if you're already wearing a hat. You know, but this whole there was another famous one too that ended up happening that I ran too, like a nuclear scientist that happened. Sharam Amari. He was a nuclear scientist. This was in 2009. He goes missing. He actually went missing. He went on a pilgrimage to Mecca, then never came back. You know, and never came back to Iran. And people think that he was either abducted. Like the two major theories that happened from him is either that he was abducted, and that he ended up in like Saudi Arabia, or he ended up in like Canada. Other people believe that he was like either black bagged or defected and ended up like is now living in Miami.
Yeah.
And you know, before people even really think that like, you know, that our government wouldn't do something like this, there actually is like an actual declassified program. I don't know what classified it was, but it was 2005. It's called Operation Brain Drain, where the United States government, literally the CIA, came up with a whole task force whose whole sole purpose was to remove Iranian nuclear scientists.
Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense then.
Yeah, like I'm not saying with these other people, and I'm not saying necessarily that I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that anybody necessarily is responsible for it. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But anyway, well, you know, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to do that. But anyway, this whole stuff like detailed for like stuff that they tried to do, and one of them being, which I thought was really cool. I thought we could talk about it. Was they held a conference and invited other nuclear scientists from around the world or physicists to come. So the Iranian government was very aware, maybe of like the United States might be behind it, might be trying to do something kind of shady, or they believed. So they sent their scientists with chaperones. You know, this happens a lot too if you're worried about defectors from your country. You know, it was like the I think she was a gymnast from Belarus or whatever that had to go with chaperones, and then she looked defected and then ended up in Poland. You know, but after she criticized the government. But anyway, the United States was like they come up with these like super secret, and I'm surprised that there's no movies being made from this, where they held the conference and they had to get the chaperones away from the Iranian scientists.
Yeah.
So what they did was they had a dinner and they tried to poison the food of the chaperones only, to give them like nausea and diarrhea, So, so that way they would like be in the bathroom, so that way they could get to the Iranian scientists.
Sneaky bastards.
Mm-hmm. Oh, like I couldn't even imagine like what that would be like being like an important scientist from another country like that, and literally just always having somebody next to you to dictate all of your actions.
Right. Yeah, that'd be kind of weird.
Mm-hmm. Like it would be like you're this nuclear scientist, and I would be hanging out next to you, and they'll be like, "Oh, what would you get? Like, what would you?" And I would take the fish, and so will he. Right? That's the point. And then we will be gone by 8. Like it's just it's terrifying.
Yeah.
Mm. And so between let's play a game. How many scientists do you think actually defected? Iranian scientists actually defected. How many people do you think that this worked on?
How many do I think defected?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, human beings are easily bought off, so it's hard to say. I don't know. Let's say 20.
Man, you are so optimistic. I don't know if it was like 6. I don't know if you were like optimistic that like people are just that easily bought off, or that Iran has that many nuclear scientists. I don't. Which one do you think that is, or do you think the government's just the U.S. government's just that effective? Which one?
Do I think the government's what? I'm sorry.
Do you think do you think Iran just had that many nuclear scientists, or do you think the U.S. government was just that effective?
Probably the latter. Probably the latter.
I think so too. Like, oh god, like have you ever looked like for people to think that like that this is like new for us to do, it's really not. Like we have been doing this for years. Like Operation Paperclip, are you familiar with that?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Our government after World War II brought over a bunch of Nazi scientists for their own rocket program, and then
They did.
I mean, Werner von Braun was he was a Nazi, and he developed NASA. So I mean, yeah, our government used Nazi scientists for their own endeavors, unfortunately, and people don't really talk about it very much, but it's true. There's a lot of
it's like a really really dark part of American history when you really think about like when you look at Operation Paperclip.
It's kind of messes with your mind knowing that at least part of our government has Nazi influence in it, and I don't know if I like that too much, to be honest, guys.
I don't either. It weirds me out because like and how they did it. I mean, it was right before the Nuremberg trials. Was pretty much you have all these scientists that are sitting in the jail cell, and in comes the man in black, and he sits down, and he's like, "Yeah, there's a car out there waiting for you to go to Nuremberg. There's another car out there that's ready to take you to New York City. If you want to come work for our nuclear rocket, like for our rocket program." And I could be like, "Well, I don't really feel comfortable doing that." And I'm like, "Yeah, the car from New York's going to leave here in the next 5 minutes. And it's going to leave only that car to Nuremberg." And then they gave him very little time to think about it.
Yeah.
And they just plucked him up, and they just brought him back over here.
Right. I mean, it plays into the whole. I think the last time we talked about the Bob Lazar story, you brought up the what's it called? Manhattan Project.
Yeah.
About how compartmentalized it is, and I'm sure that with Project Paperclip, I'm sure that there was obviously a lot of compartmentalization with that as well.
Oh, I 100% believe. And you know what? And you see that, and you see that very similarly. Because we're on this whole shtick about this clandestine thing. Because I see that in the news where because I watched a news story about this about I think it was the guy who was assassinated, the Iranian nuclear scientist that was assassinated in 2020, where it wasn't him. It was like 3 other scientists that were brought on, I guess, that sort of knew him. One was from London. think one was from Canada. There was some guy. There was some, I don't know. There was some Caucasian guy. I can't remember where he was from. And there was another one that I think was also from Tehran. And they were talking about, did they really believe that this guy was actually a nuclear scientist? And I think the one from Tehran said no, he was like just some other sort of theoretical physicist. The guy from London said the same thing, and the white guy said he wasn't sure. But the weird thing about it is, again, is like just like this stuff, like with the Manhattan Project, when you're doing clandestine work, you don't know. A lot of your friends, they might not know what you're doing, and truthfully, you might not even know necessarily what you're doing either.
Yeah, true. You only know what you need to know and nothing beyond that.
Right. Right. So, if you're an Iranian nuclear scientist and, you're one of the, you may not even work, you might not even know specifically what you are actually working on.
Yeah.
So it might turn in one of those situations whenever like an Operation Brain Drain with one of the things that they're trying to do is they're letting people know maybe what they're doing, and maybe that's what's causing them to have a change of heart when they realize that.
It could be.
Because I think it's very easy to vilify somebody like that. But if you're the Iranian government, you don't want people to know, and you're trying to do your own sort of Manhattan Project for whatever reason that it is, why wouldn't you follow the same model to keep it secret? Because that would be a huge secret you would want to keep secret.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So I don't know. I think it kind of gives me an out of not trying to necessarily think badly on some of these scientists when I think about them. I don't know. Maybe it helps me sleep at night. I don't know. It kind of gives me an out. Like I don't know. Do you think that they know, or do you think that it's more compartmentalized, or what do you think?
I think it's probably as compartmentalized as it can be. I mean, I doubt any of these other nations are as good at it as the American government. Obviously, I mean they can compartmentalize anything when it comes down to it. But I think other nations probably use that playbook as well.
I agree with you on that, because I think that's a good way to lead into kind of what happened that I found in Pakistan. So Pakistan had a very similar thing go down where there's a bunch of strange disappearances within the last 20 years for their nuclear program. In the last 20 years, 9 Pakistani nuclear scientists have disappeared from the country. Like not even, and have never even been found. That's one of the strangest things that I found about these because what you'll run into with Iran and India that we're going to go into next is a lot of people end up like dead, and they end up dead. But in Pakistan, the scientists that have disappeared have never been seen again.
Yeah. Well, it makes you wonder what it was that they were working on at the time of their disappearance.
I do too. Because there is a lot, or there is a lot of other facets to nuclear research. It is for medical purposes. People use it for food. People use it for all the other sorts of things too. But like one thing that I do know that like about that I found odd is, they said that they disappeared. They don't know like where do you think that they ended up? Because it's not like the United States is the only place trying to get their hands on scientists that know how to do these sorts of things, right?
Right.
Like there's other countries that are around the world, like North Korea, India, Iran. They're losing people too, that are trying to get trying to get their hands on nuclear scientists as well.
Yeah.
But I will say, man, these strangest cases came from India. So, man, it's like
to hear about those. Like I said, I'm not too familiar with this kind of stuff.
Oh, no. It's India is weird. So the stuff with India started since the 1960s. Okay, that's how far back their stuff has been, where people have been where the nuclear scientists have been disappearing. So the father of India's nuclear program, Dr. Homi, and I can never pronounce people's names, so I'm not gonna pronounce Homi Janagir Ababa, I think it's how you pronounce it. Anyway, sorry. A guy who's won multiple Nobel Prizes. and it's essentially the father of the Indian nuclear program. Okay, he was on a plane on January 24th, 1966, and the plane crashes into a mountain, and a lot of people, and he passes away. Literally, just a few days before that, the Indian government had been very critical of the Chinese government for their nuclear program, and the Chinese government trying to interfere in them developing their own nuclear program.
Yeah.
And so many people became super sketchy and super skeptical of this plane crash. Actually, they blamed it on like a lack of communication. When years later, a lot of people are still kind of questioning that. Literally 13 days, this happens 13 days after another major Indian political official publicly criticized the Chinese government, and then later dies from food, like just mysteriously becomes ill and dies.
Yeah. Coincidence, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And a CIA operative named Robert Crowley told a U.S. journalist, Gregory Douglas, in his book Conversations with the Crow, that the CIA was responsible for these two guys actually like being taken out.
Huh.
Which I thought was weird, that everybody was blaming the Chinese government, and this guy claiming that claiming the U.S. government was responsible for it. But then again, people still criticize: is this leaked information? Is this misinformation? Is this just Chinese propaganda? Who knows?
Right.
But literally, that's just the tip of the weird nuclear scientist disappearance berg in India. But they had another nuclear scientist in 2009 commit suicide with literally no media coverage. It was a very prominent one. And between 2010 to 2014, they had 11 nuclear scientists and engineers die. Yep.
So don't get into the nuclear program.
No, no, it was weird. Okay, so 2013, one of the strangest cases of this was two prominent nuclear submarine engineers were found lying on railroad tracks, already dead. But they were found by their coworkers like beforehand, like just already lying on the railroad tracks before the train got there.
Huh. Maybe they were found before they were supposed to. Maybe they wanted the train to ride over them before they were found.
Yep. According to the Indian government, over a 3-year period, at least 9 unnatural deaths of scientists and engineers occurred at between 2 facilities, the Indian Atomic Research Center and the Kaiga nuclear facility. 2 of them were classified as suicide, and the rest still remained unexplained. Between 2009 and 2013, a minimum of 10 employees for the atomic energy perished in either murders or mysterious fires.
Jeez.
Oh yeah, the deaths, all of them mysterious, have been connected to by one common thread. All of the alleged murder victims were all associated with the nuclear energy program. They've all, including one in which where there was a fire at one of their labs that contained no flammable chemicals. Wow. And the cause of the fire is still yet to be determined.
And this is all still just India, right?
Yeah, this is all just any of the stuff that I've just named, that they've like just in this time frame of what has happened, of all these Indian like nuclear officials that have just gone missing.
That's pretty crazy. I don't know what to make of all that, to be honest.
I don't know either. And yeah.
What what's your take on that, as far as like,
okay,
what do you think that is?
One of the things that I found very, very odd about this was the lack of response that it seemed from the Indian government. That, imagine, like, okay, the general rhetoric that you generally hear from a country when they feel like that some sort of foreign influence is going on in their country, generally it's pretty fiery, they're upset, they're mad. Normal, right? Okay, countries can't take that lying down. But you have these stream of very important officials that all end up dying mysterious deaths. Like in Iran, like I said, if they were to go somewhere else, they were chaperoned. Like, the head of Iran's nuclear had two cars that was in front of him, one in front of him, one behind him, that he was being escorted. They had to be removed, and this it's very, very weird that, and a lot of people that critique what's going on in India with the lack of response from the government is that they don't seem concerned, or they're not bothered by it, at least publicly. I don't know.
Maybe they've all adopted the Gandhi philosophy of an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind, all that stuff. So even if they're nuclear scientists are being assassinated or black bagged or whatever, well, just one of those things, guys.
Yeah. What do you think's going on? What would be your thoughts on why there is a lack of response?
I mean, I honestly couldn't tell you. I mean, that's very strange that there isn't. I mean, unless they just don't feel that they have a strong enough military nation, whatever, to delve into it. Not enough research teams, not like the equivalent of our CIA and NSA and stuff like that. They don't have enough manpower, so to speak, to figure out what's going on, so they don't delve into it too deep.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, really, to be honest.
I'm the same way too. I find it very puzzling. That's probably, unless, to me, it doesn't seem like a situation in which they're trying to motivate scientists to do better. It's really not as far as I'm aware of, where people easily go missing. The only real geopolitical rival that I've seen from them is China, that I've seen that would because there's always real tension, and I guess Pakistan too.
Yeah. I mean, China's messed with a lot of countries around that region. Tibet, for one. I mean, China's not immune from fucking with scene. China's not immune from messing with countries that they see as inferior and that they want to control more. And I'm sure that they don't want these apparent weaker countries getting their hands on any kind of weapons that's going to challenge their authority in the region. Maybe could be. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I don't really know.
It doesn't surprise me that you see a lot of governments trying to push to being nuclear capable, because they're obviously wanting to be, more important on the global stage, because you have to have that. I mean, hell, if you look at the UN Security Council, the five major permanent members all have nuclear arms. France, China, the United States, the UK, Great Britain. Did I mention them?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oh, and Soviet Union. I'm sorry. And so, and that's not accidental. These are all post World War, II. These are all World War II post victors. So, it doesn't shock me that you're seeing this. It often makes me, wonder, with these clandestine secret government operations that are moving around, of what's going on behind the shadows of them trying to either move them around or relocate them or move them.
Did you ever watch this skit comedy show called Whitest Kids You Know? Did you ever watch that?
Oh, tell me about it.
It was pretty funny. Unfortunately, one of its founding members, Trevor Moore. Sorry, Trevor Noah is the new Daily Show host. I get those two confused sometimes. The names are so similar. But Trevor Moore, he died recently, unfortunately. But what you just said reminded me of one of the skits that they did back then. It was called Nerf Nukes, and they were like, the skit was there were a bunch of neighborhood kids running around with Nerf nuclear weapons, and then this poor kid walks up to him and tells them, "Hey, I got a Nerf nuke," and they're like, "But you're poor. You can't have a Nerf nuke." So they just beat the crap out of him and pummel him, and then so yeah, it was their point was that they don't want any kind of developing nation other than themselves. They want the superpowers to have the nukes, and then they don't want any competition in that regard. So I thought it was a good way of illustrating that. Yeah, and like I said, unfortunately, Trevor Moore died earlier this month. It's kind of sad because he was a pretty funny dude, and so if you ever get a chance to watch those old Whitest Kids You Know episodes, I recommend it.
You know, and I tell you what, I think you're right on that. So something that struck my mind when I was thinking about this, about why would you be trying to remove other countries from having nuclear arms, other than just the concept just because they can't have them. So a lot of the modern like UFO inspired religions all came about in the 1950s. A lot of them did. Scientology did. The Theorist Society that me and Ellie did, Vic's Bob did back in the day, and a lot of those types of religions were formed in the 50s, and they were formed generally after like modern countries now develop nuclear weapons, and they all claim that once we developed nuclear weapons, that extraterrestrials became interested in Earth. Like that was the focal point. Like that was the event that triggered people's attention on us. So I have always said that you know, me and Vic said too, that if aliens showed up, it probably would not be in our best interest, you know, when they get here, because in the course of events, anytime a more advanced civilization is encountered a less advanced civilization, it is caused that less advanced civilization's assimilation, enslavement, or extermination.
Yeah.
You know, so it makes me wonder whether or not, if, you know, some of this, if we are attracting attention from aliens, that they're trying to keep other countries from being the ones that's drawing their attention. So like if aliens showed up, they're kind of talk to us rather than the other country. They're like, we want to be on the good list. You know, it's like the Coneheads, like we want to be on the protected list. You know, when the Conehead aliens show up, you know, we're like, good, look what we can do. We can do these very cool things. Like we want them to come to our house. It's like, you know, instead of somewhere else.
So what are the aliens like? Some of them are really cool. Some are kind of shitty. We're pretty tight with the shitty ones.
Yeah. You know, we bought the beer, we bought the nukes. We made the nuclear powered gas stations for them. You know, that way they would stop here instead. You know, they bought a Slurpee and then they left. It just, you know, it turns into one of those deals. You know, I don't know. I don't know. I've always found like the weird sort of clandestine agencies between multiple different countries, like in the wars and in the conflicts that they do, to be really interesting to read. I mean, it's like James Bond, you know, but with like nukes.
Yeah. I'd say that there's more collaboration between those superpowers than they make it appear.
I would agree with that.
Like I think it's just a worldwide version of like American politics, where like in America you have the left versus the right, conservative versus liberal, yada yada yada. And I think on a worldwide scale, it's kind of similar to these different nations. You might have China versus America, China versus Russia. Well, not China versus Russia. They seem to be, at least on appearances, seem to be on the same team. Russia versus America, whatever the case may be. But I think that they're probably. I can't talk today. Sorry.
No, you're fine. They're probably more in cahoots than you think.
I think there's more collaboration between these nations than they make it appear. Just like there's more bipartisanship between Democrats and Republicans, as far as like when it comes to foreign policy and actual domestic policy. They might make it seem like there's differences between them, but ultimately their end goals are the same.
But isn't that good when it comes to nuclear politics?
Well, I mean, like I said earlier, like
that one.
I think that they use the nuclear situation to keep their own individual populations under control to a certain degree. I mean, everything they do is for that. But like I said,
I agree with you.
the thought of nuclear annihilation is a good motivating factor to not shake the boat too much.
I agree. It reminded me, you were talking about skits. It reminded me of that Simpsons episode where Homer and Marge taking that Albanian kid, and it turns out he's a spy for their government, and he was like stealing secrets from Homer's nuclear plant that he works at, and he got caught. Yeah. And they're like, "Oh, is there gonna be problems?" He goes, "No, we're gonna exchange it for one of ours," you know. And it's like there's a plane, and there's like an American kid spy and the Albanian kid. They're like, "Ah, we gotta stop meeting like this." It was pretty cordial the whole time. They just went home.
Right. It's probably truer than people would think.
Yeah. All the CIA, KGB agents just sort of like hang out, look at a coffee shop somewhere, and just talk. I'm like, all right, we're just hanging out talking. All right, the media shows up. We're just gonna start shooting at each other. You shoot high, I'll shoot low.
Exactly.
That's the real clandestine stuff. That they're just meeting at Starbucks, mocking us.
I mean, I'd say that's pretty accurate, actually.
Oh man. Oh.
And I could get into like, well, I mean, I could go on and on about intergovernmental relationships, but I mean, that's a topic for another day, I'd say. Because if I start down that rabbit hole, I won't stop talking for 2 hours, and your audience doesn't want to hear that, I'm sure. At least not currently.
No, I do, but so I think we're sort of kind of, I think, getting to a good stopping point. But what are your final thoughts? Like, what at the end of the day, what do you think is really going on with some of these disappearances and some of these murders that are going on? Do you think that it's all one thing? It's bigger picture, just like, why is it going on?
I mean, I honestly, like, if I had to guess, like I said, this isn't like an area of my particular expertise, but if I had to guess, it's so that these developing nations can't become. I think the superpowers are probably making sure that these developing nations can't be a threat to their own power, and so maybe they're creating situations where these smaller nations, weaker nations, nuclear scientists have to be eradicated so that they don't get too far along in their programs. That could be just a guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really hard to know. It's always very, I would love to definitely be a fly in the room for a lot of these, some of these like closed door meetings that goes on between a lot of like nations to kind of see what is the real conversation that is going on. I think that we've seen so much examples of alien technology where it seems like nuclear energy seems to be at the forefront at a lot of that, either at a lot of that technology, whether it's alien technology in itself or it's just the best attempt that we have to mimic anything, like what we talked about in Bob Lazar. Like, that was our best attempt at mimicking the technology.
Right.
And I think the group of people that can control that type of energy probably at the end of the day are going to be the ones that are going to be the ones sticking around. I think you're probably right that it is in some way, shape, or form a power play, and it's watching that stuff go on is definitely some of the best way. It's some of the only times that we're ever going to see some of that clandestine stuff go down.
Right.
We talk about the Illuminati all day long, right? People say that super secret government, or super secret international like agencies that are ruling the world. It's hard because the average person's never going to see behind that veil. You'll only see actions from it. And it's this puzzle piece of what we're trying to put together. So we're always trying to do. That's what the always average man is. And I think when it comes to nuclear scientists and them disappearing or ending up not around anymore, I think that's what we're seeing. Is I think we're seeing some of that clandestine operations going down.
Yeah, definitely. I'd have to agree with that.
Yeah. So I want to know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you guys think that, do you guys think that do you guys think the motivations is more aliens? Do you think that it's just one government trying to keep another government down? Do you think that it's all internal? Do you think this is all just something that's going on internally within the country, like with their own structures, like that's going on? I definitely want to know what you guys think below in the comments below. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. I always love talking nuclear politics. I want to thank you, by the way, for coming on, Libertarian Guitarist. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Marcus.
Yes, and we're going to have you back, absolutely. For those of you that are patrons, make sure you stick around because we're going to talk a little bit more in the Patreon section where we're going to talk about nuclear weapons that disappear. That's a strange disappearance. That's kind of a concerning one. It's kind of
a good
weird,
time.
But,
great oldies.
Oh yeah. So we're going to be talking about that in the Patreon section. So I've got some interesting thoughts on that. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you guys listen to this, leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe. If you guys listen on YouTube, hit that notification bell because that's how you stay up to date whenever we put out a new episode. Make sure you guys check in for the next episode because that's when Vic's going to be returning. And the return of the Waitley. I want to thank you again one more time, man, for coming on the podcast. I super appreciate it.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. But until next time, guys, keep believing because we'll keep listening. All right, guys, we're going to slide into the Pillow Talk segment of this podcast. If you want to check out the rest of this awesome podcast, all you got to do is go over to our Patreon and sign up. For as little as $1 a month, you get all of the rest of this awesome podcast as well as bonus episodes that me and Vic put up exclusively for our Patreon. If you are a $2 or more a month member, you actually get to vote on the topic, the theme of the month. And I'm checking it out right now. Our September one is currently running at hairy humanoids. Neat. I know that'll make Vic happy that if we ended up getting that. And Ghost Towns with a close second. I like that. So go over to our Patreon and you guys get to vote. Let your voices be heard. So I thought in the Patreon section, the Pillow Talk segment, we would talk a little bit more about the strange disappearance of nuclear weapons. I never thought that I would say that sentence. That's like losing an elephant. I don't know how you lose that.
Yeah, it's just one of those things, I guess.
It's like, you ever seen like Ace Ventura? It's like that scene whenever the dolphin gets stalled.
Right.
The boss is like, I got just one question. How the hell do you lose the other pound fish?